Hello, it's Charlotte's sister C. Farrell, host of Powered by Age, Canada's longest-running senior-led podcast that invites you to do what you love.
This podcast is for you if you love writing or telling stories, if you love sharing poetry or doing interviews.
This podcast is for you if you love working on ways to create age-friendly cities.
This podcast is for you if you love learning how to tame technology and get more out of virtual events, if you love finding more ways to share your heritage or traditions.
If you love any of these things, you can go beyond listening and join our weekly podcast group. Simply email pbaafc@gmail.com and put your name in the subject line. Powered by Age is sponsored by the Government of Canada, New Horizons Grant, the 411 Senior Center Society, and G&F Financial Group. Welcome to Powered by Age, the senior-led podcast that is sponsored by the 411 Center, the Government of Canada, New Horizons Program, and the F&G Financial Group. Today, we are going to be doing something very interesting, and by way of introducing new people to the book, I'll wait a little bit later to kind of give an overview of what we're doing now. Ramona, hello and welcome. Right now we're at our introductions to the program, and we'll be inviting you to introduce yourself. I want to acknowledge that our work takes place on the unceded lands of the Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish nations, unceded, and at some point, there will be a requisition, there will be a resolution to unite people with their lands or to give compensation for the use of the land. During our podcast, we have worked to build leadership skills within the presenters so that sometimes we have external speakers and sometimes we have members of our group who, based on the expertise or areas of interest they have, they present the program. And so we, in our recruitment for the summer program, we've called July Juicy July. And one of the things we talked about doing this week is having people who have written a book, writers, sharing some of the tips and techniques and allowing others who feel like or have heard they've got a book in them to ask questions. So that's going to be our main activity for today. And we are going to continue to look forward to what other things we had talked about for this month, that we're going to do movement and motion. We have a participant who has studied a course on how to use movement so that it is a healing activity. We also have two people within our group, Ryan, my screen is cut off so that Neall has lost it. I just see Ryan over there, but who has done EFT, and periodically it's good to have these things that you can just do for a couple of moments. Chris has experienced chair exercise. Some other people have done chair exercise. So we're going to be showing some ways to not have this hour that we sit not only in this Zoom, but other programs that are doing their celebrations, their annual events through seated. We're going to look at some ways to do more movement. And then we had talked about that there's an interest in seniors, we called it grown folks talking about sexuality and sensuality. And we were looking at possibly doing that the fourth Thursday of the month. And we're thinking that we'll probably have two sessions dealing with that because this is also Pride Month. In June, we acknowledge Pride Month internationally, but in Vancouver, it is August. And so we're going to be drawing upon some of our members from Quirky for ideas on how we would discuss sensuality and sexuality, as well as highlight the e-zine and other things that are happening around Vancouver. On the 30th, the 411 Center is a sponsor of, I think Chris, is it an all-day event that's going to be happening at Community?
That's the event for older adults, right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Yes. And so there is part of it that is it's not all day. There's part of it that is in person, and they're also doing virtual. And the zine, what happens is, what's been happening is that for people during this time of the pandemic, and when people haven't actually been able to physically get together, they've put packages together and they've distributed those packages to people who register for the event. So the zine has always gone in those packages. So I know for sure that the zine will be going out in those packages. And I know that Community was printing 50 copies for themselves for that event and 50 copies for Quirky. So I'm sure there'll be some available, and I can find out. I know a couple of people are going to be there in person, so I'll make sure that they have a few copies.
Okay, well, the four senior centers as co-sponsors or participants in sponsoring the event, we're looking for a way that with our podcast we can share some of the information or share some of the activities that would be happening there for people who won't be going to the live event. So I can talk with you a bit more about how that might take place on the Thursday, the 29th of July. So we're in juicy July. So today we're going to introduce ourselves in the normal fashion, and then of our authors putting on the square stage, we're our rectangular stage. Neall and Lesley sharing some tips of your process in finishing a book or completing a book, and ideas on marketing. I have some things from a book that I was just recently included in, and there were some marketing tips that I will share from that, and I think each of you have had different ones. So that's the focus of our conversation today, and we expect other people that are going to be dropping in who said they wanted to take part of this to be joining us. So we'll start with the windows. I'll ask Jesse.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jesse. Was at the dentist this morning, so my mouth is a little frozen still. Was there a prompt beyond who I am? I'm sorry, I missed that part. Or am I just introducing myself?
Just who you are. Yes.
I'm Jesse. I help with technical stuff here at the podcast. Apparently the dentist is affecting more than just my mouth. Happy to be here today.
Okay, Lesley?
Yes, I'm Lesley Hebert. I live in New Westminster. I teach English as a second language online via Skype and Zoom. And I also write poetry, short stories, and I'm in the process of trying to complete a book about my travels to Japan a while back.
Okay, Neall?
Yes, my name is Neall Ryan, and I'm a published author, self-published, by the way. This is From the Other Side, and I have it both in soft copy and in hard copy, which are, I'm quite surprised how beautiful they turned out. And I have a brand new book at the printers called The Brighton Tarot Card Mystery, but I'm just publishing just locally here. I haven't gone to the big time publisher in the U.S., but I have some tips about it, and be happy to share them with you. So, thank you.
Okay, Chris, thank you.
My name's Chris Morrissey, and I live in East Van, and I'm a member of Quirky, the Queer Imaging and Writing Collective for Elders. And we took we decided we wanted to use not the actual letters that normally spell writers, but we wanted to end up with an acronym, a word. So Queer Imaging and Writing for Elders. I'm in the process of trying to put together a whole bunch of different pieces that I've written and to see how they might form a memoir or part of a memoir. And tonight, I've just joined the City of Vancouver Advisory Committee for People with Disabilities, and tonight's the first meeting of that advisory committee.
Are they meeting virtually or physically?
Yes, virtually.
Great. So we'll know who to funnel our suggestions to or ideas. Nancy?
Oh, hi. I'm Nancy Sinclair, and I love to write myself. I've contributed to a couple of different books, and I'm really interested to hear everybody's process today. So thank you.
Okay. Ramona?
Hi. So I'm Ramona, and I'm a retired professor, Mumbai University. We came to Toronto 3 years ago and moved to Vancouver 6 months ago. So I have one published text. It's actually my thesis, for which I got a publication award. So this is an academic book, but I wanted to try my hand at writing, creative writing. So I have specialized in French, and I have written a small book for children. But being a teacher, like it's not exactly only a story. You could learn French by reading that book. So that I would like to know how to go about publishing it. And I can't afford to go to hire a publisher. So self-publication seems to be a very good option. I also started writing small memoir, just vignettes about a few of my family members. So I'm in the process of completing that. And so your topic for today's podcast was really very attractive to me. So that's about it so far.
Okay, and I'd like to acknowledge she's Dr. Ramona. She sent a very nice note. So welcome to our group.
Thank you. Thank you so much. All of you are so talented and accomplished. I'm honored to be with you.
Well, we're honored to have you with us. So with that, I'll say I have published 2 books of poetry, and then the most recently thing I'm involved with is this is an anthology. It was an anthology of a woman has printed. This is her 3rd round of publishing things for people. That's an anthology. Her first was Entrepreneurial Women of Faith, and in that first one, it was only Christian faith stories. And the second one was Entrepreneurial Women of Faith of Any Faith. And there were stories. And then the third one was 2020, A Year of Faith. And each person was asked to write about how their faith helped them through the pandemic. But today I'll be sharing some of the marketing materials that she used to go with the book, which is kind of a stepping stone of learning from being a publisher, using the tools that are in Amazon and other things that help self-publishers, to then creating things that help authors to publish their books or promote their books. So who would like to share first about their process or tips in the books that they have done or working on?
Yeah, okay, I'll go first. Who wants to jump in? The Japanese memoir that I'm writing is actually my second attempt at a book. My first attempt was something that came out of my teaching at an international language school, and the need for phonics material for adults whose first alphabet is not the Roman alphabet. And I got a lot of encouragement from my colleagues at work, and I completed the book. And then it was like, oh, I have to find a publisher, and I never did. It seemed to be more work looking for a publisher than it did actually writing the book. And I was looking at specialist ESL publishers across North America. And I think I spent as much writing my proposal for publication as I did almost the actual book. So that's kind of fallen by the wayside. I gave up on that. And then now my second effort here started out, it was interesting that Dr. Srinivasan talked about vignettes. Started out as a series of short stories that I did for a writing group. based on a trip I took to Japan 10 years ago now, for a family event, actually, and to stay with friends in Japan. And it's I'm attempting to provide an insight that goes a little deeper than the regular travelogue, because I was actually in this total immersion experience, staying with family, staying with friends. And it's been a lot of fun. What has helped me with this is I started out with the vignettes, and then it's important to have a draft outline so you know where your thing's going before you even start. And I've tried to make a habit of writing something every day, or at least doing a little bit of revision every day. It's important to have a routine and allow time to do it. I've realized that this is going to be a very lengthy procedure. I've been on it for a year already. It's and I belong to a writing group, which I would also encourage people to do if you're working on a text. A very supportive group. We read pieces to each other, and we provide constructive feedback to each other. And that's really helped me to focus and improve my writing technique as well. Because I've never taken any formal creative writing classes, but I realized when I started this that I did have a lot to learn. And then once you get something written, go back and revise and review, polish it up. Everything that I feel is more or less complete, I've actually is sort of a third or sometimes a fourth draft of the original. So yeah, the first draft is just a starting point, and it is work to go back and revise and revise and revise. When it comes to marketing, I'm not there yet. I'm about 2/3 of the way through my project. So I will be very interested today in hearing marketing tips. Actually, it would be very useful for me too. So yes, if anybody has any questions.
Yeah, Lesley, you mentioned writing group. And I think I remember you said you live in East Van?
New Westminster.
Oh, New Westminster. Oh, so no. Then I really wanted to know what that writing group was, because when I was in Toronto, I did join Firefly Creative Writing group, the life story workshop, and that's how I came out with that idea.
We're actually meeting on Zoom right now. So if you want to leave me your email, I can certainly send you some contact information. We've actually got a member he's actually down in Washington State right now. So we'll probably keep the Zoom format so that all our members can still continue to take part.
Okay. So I leave my email in the chat.
Yeah, please.
I would be very happy to get connected. Thank you so much. I appreciate all your tips, and I know what you're saying is right, like having the routine and writing it, because I wrote all that a year ago, and then I just didn't look at it again. And there is no excuse. You have to be more disciplined. I have to rather. Okay.
I must admit, it's been a bit easier during the pandemic because I've been at home so much.
Okay. Yeah, I guess. Yeah. But then, I had all these challenges of adjusting to this new country and climate and at this age, and, moving from Toronto to Vancouver, and everything was so that I know these sound like excuses, but I couldn't focus my mind. So I thank you for reiterating that, sitting every day and writing. There is no other option for getting it done.
Right.
So Lesley, I have a question. You talked about, and you said about writing the vignettes, and then did you write them in any order, or how?
Not particularly. When I travel, I usually keep a travel journal, which was actually very helpful recalling details, but not the writing group that I'm in now, but I joined another writing group and we did a whole group of courses on travel writing, and I actually wrote these for that particular group. And no, not in any particular order, just things that I remembered that were particularly vivid in my mind. And one of them is actually going to be the last chapter of the book.
Okay.
Another one is going to be sort of the first chapter, and a couple more come somewhere around the middle, but I've reordered them since I wrote them.
Okay. And what criteria did you use for ordering them and reordering them?
Well, it's a chronological order. It's the order of the trip and the experiences that I went through based on my travel journal.
Okay. Yes. Thanks.
One of the things Jim Arnett said, he's done vignettes and memoirs, that it's easy. Another way is something that you're really excited about. If there was some particular thing about the trip, sometimes people make that wait until they've done, things in chronological order. So whatever that hot thing is, write it, because then it encourages you to do the rest. It helps to just enjoy the experience again. Yeah. So he said that's true both of whether it's a travel memoir or whether it's a memoir about life. That's the sticking place people get sometimes, of that it's not in order.
Yeah, another thing, just in answer to Chris's question also, is although it's basically chronological, it's also travel writing it's an acting creative nonfiction. So I've played with the timeline a little just to make it more of a readable narrative, and I have changed the order of some of the events, but that has come after the first draft.
Yeah. One of the things I like about yours too, Nancy, is that sometimes people say, oh, that was 5 years ago, it's too late. And so even though it was 10 years, you're still excited about it and dedicated to getting it out. So I think that's very encouraging. Around writing groups, I have written poetry, but there was a period at 65 I decided I'd go to film school, and we had to write scripts. And so I found it really helpful then having a group that would read pages and people would give you feedback. Well, since I've been in LA, since I've been in Vancouver, I haven't done any new scripts. So I started searching around, and I found there were two groups, one that meets at 7:00 at night. And I thought, well, that'll be great because everything's settled. But then I find they read until 11 because each person has a chance to read 10 pages and then they give feedback. But Facebook groups is also a place that you can find writers groups around different topics and different types of writers, from screenwriters, mystery writers, etc. Okay, Neall, you want to share about your tips or techniques? And I think there are a few people who have questions about the self-publishing.
Can I share a little bit about my experience of, this is the second publisher that I've worked with. I agree with Lesley 100% that trying to find a printer and going with cap in hand to please publish my my book. I found that a little bit daunting, but also I had a particular publisher that I had in mind for this. And when I went there, they talked me into publishing it. I wanted to publish with the biggest publisher of self-help books, because my book From the Other Side is spiritually oriented, and so I went to Hay House, and they put me into their publishing group, which is Balboa. And I want to tell you very briefly about self-publishing publishers. They take no risk because you pay for everything up front. You pay for absolutely everything. And so it cost me about $2,000 by the time all the dust settled and so forth. And but they never sold a single book. Now, a few of them got sold because I carried a card and I talked to people. I talk to people all the time, and even last night at the grocery store, I invited a couple of people to go to Westwood Books and buy a copy of whether they do or not. That's you make your best effort and then you let go of the outcome. And shame on me that I paid another $1,800 in total to $1,200 to start with, and then another $500 to get a web page, which I have no idea where the hell the web page has gone. But Westwood Books, I gotta just say one thing: they did a really, really good job of putting together the book. It feels good, and I'd have to go get it, but the hard copy is just absolutely beautiful. So I bought a few of my own, and there's been a few sales, but they want me to do all the promotional, all the marketing, they published me last December with my money, but I've had a couple of health challenges this year and have not had the time and energy. But I've started just this week to go to the Burnaby Library to say, hey, I think you should carry my book. And we'll see how that goes. And I'm also going to take, I've ordered another 10 books from Westwood Books. I've ordered another 10. Plus I've ordered 10 of the new one from the local publisher, and they only cost me, I'm really surprised. It's exactly 90 pages. It's called The Brighton Tarot Card Mystery, and it's got 3 short stories. It's got The Brighton Tarot Card Mystery, which is 40 pages, and then it's got 3 of my own short stories, and then it's got 5 short stories, and my publisher here, my printer here, is giving it to me at a very reasonable price, and I'm going to take 10 and go to the local stores, and I'm trying to get a little display rack, and so I'm working on it, which is I'm just sort of beginning to do some marketing, but I'm going to go to local stores and see if they will take 5 copies. And if they have sold them, then they pay me. And then that way they almost can't turn me down, because I'm giving them a chance to sell 5 copies at $15 a piece. We split that half and half, and we'll see how that goes. But as far as Westwood Books is concerned, I've had some real difficult times with them, and the latest one is that I paid them $500 for a web page, and I have no idea where it is, and I have phoned. So shame on me, fool me twice. I got fooled twice. That somehow that the self-publishing, I tell you, the real simple fact is they want to carry the book on my dime. They don't invest anything. They make sure that theirs is covered with both hands. So I'm still paying for the last one, and I'll have my credit cards paid shortly. I just paid one of them off, so I was really, really pleased with that one. I got one of them out of the way. I think the New Zealand word is I was really chiffed. That means I'm really proud of myself. So anyway.
Chuffed in the UK. He says really chuffed.
Chuffed. Yes. Thank you.
And what was the local publisher that you used?
I use Minuteman printers, and they're just on in New West. They're just at Agnes Street, right beside Douglas College, and Patrick is the man there, and I've done business with him for a few years because I've published the tarot card mysteries. I published them about 3 years ago. The first, I like Lesley's idea of rereading the draft. I do it by going and publishing it, and then I find the mistakes.
You know, even after you publish it, you're going to notice typos. Believe me.
Yes. So I just did it for the third time of print, but it's already sold 4 copies, maybe 5.
Good.
Yeah. I have a group that I work with out of Eastern Washington, and we do healing meditation every week. Every Wednesday night we do a healing meditation, I mentioned that I had a book published, and so they bought 5 copies of my From the Other Side, and they asked if I had anything else, and I said, well, I've got the tarot card mystery, and they said, send us down a copy. And they well paid me for the last one because we sent it down by courier, and they looked after the cost of the book and a little to boot. So, but the only thing I gotta say again is that the self-publishing. And Lesley, the reason I went to the self-publisher right out of the gate was because I had a specific publisher I wanted to do business with, and it didn't work out too well. But the other reason is I agree with you 100% that going about trying to find a publisher just out of the blue to connect with the publisher, I didn't want to go through all that work. You know, I had done what I originally planned to do, which is to write a book of poetry. And after I got that done, I added the short stories, because there's 3 short stories, one at the beginning, one in the middle, and one at the end. And then I put 60 poems around those 3 short stories.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when I was trying to get the phonics book published, I had a very finite list. So there are only, I think, maybe 20 publishers that specialize in ESL in the whole Anglosphere, basically. So it was very limited. So I was very focused. So I didn't have to think, I mean, there are thousands, hundreds and thousands of publishing houses out there. And where do you start? So I didn't have that problem. But the problem is, after I'd exhausted the list, I had nowhere else to go. And it wasn't a project that I could self-publish because it's actually designed as a workbook to use in class. So, yeah.
I'd like to know if, Nancy, have you published a book? And how did you find your publisher? If the answer is yes.
Oh, the books that I wrote into were like a joint effort, a collaboration, so I wasn't involved with the publishing part of it, but I'm familiar with quite a bit in terms of, I too am a member of the Hay House writing, and then also got involved with self-publishing school. And just you had mentioned earlier, that's the big thing. There's a big difference between the publishing and the marketing, right? So the publishers, they're just there to do the publishing. And the big emphasis, both in the self-publishing school I was involved with and with the Hay House, is like you mentioned, it's up to us as the writers to do all the marketing. And ideally, to start building that platform long before you can start writing the book. But even as you're writing the book and as you're getting close to finishing the book, it's a big commitment. Like there's a lot of work to be done. It can be very overwhelming because there's a lot of pieces to the puzzle. And so the publishing is one aspect, the marketing is another aspect, and the writing.
Yes.
I know Neall knows Ruth Kozak, and she has, I think Charlotte knows her as well. She's actually published a historical novel, which took her 20 years to write with all the research involved. And it took her, I think, a couple of years to find a publisher. She was actually relentless in pursuing a publisher. But then I was surprised to learn that once the book was published, it wasn't the publisher that did the publicity. She had to do it all herself.
Yeah.
And this is a hard copy publisher.
Yeah.
And she's also subsequently self-published the same book and is actually now finding she's making more money through Amazon than she is through her royalties from the publisher.
Yeah.
And there's all sorts of books you can buy that are very supportive around how to self-publish and step-by-step and what's involved with it. So the other thing I wanted to share too, just in terms of encouragement for writing, because writing can be the difficult thing in terms of building that discipline. And not only sometimes building the discipline, but when I find for myself when I sit down to write it, it's sometimes a mindset, thinking I need to do it in a certain order, or sometimes I have all these thoughts going through my head and I can't seem to get them to paper quickly enough. And I do the, record on my phone. Sometimes that's effective, sometimes it's not. It still never seems to come out as as fluid as it does when it's just running through my head. And because I spend a lot of time outside and spend a lot of time hiking, that's where everything really flows. So it's trying to find that way to capture it all. But online, through Zoom, that we've all been, hanging out in these Zoom rooms for this last year and a half, there's through Meetup, there's a group called Shut Up and Write, and they have all sorts of, so the benefit of it is they actually is a writing group that generally meets in person. However, because of COVID, they pivoted and everything's online. And now that everything's opening up, they're doing a little bit of a hybrid. So some places they're going back to meeting in person. But the nice thing about it is because you can join online, you could join any group anywhere in the world sort of thing that does a Shut Up and Write. They're 24/7, all sorts of different chapters. And so the idea is it's a 2.5-hour session. It starts at whatever time. They just introduce each other. The facilitator gets it going. They put you on a timer. You do whatever you're going to do. You could be paying your bills. You could be writing your book. You could be marketing. You could do whatever your focus is. But there's something about that accountability, knowing that you're going to come back after an hour. It's like a 10-minute break. Then they go back for another hour. And at the end of the second hour, then they come back anywhere from, 15, 20, 30 minutes. And everybody shares what their experience has been and their progress. And, so I have done it a few different times and I really found it helpful. There's just something about knowing that there's somebody else doing the same thing to some degree. And then, like I say, and then you're coming back to connect with one another. And for me, it was helpful because all the different writers groups and people that have been published and have published multiple books, that's the whole thing. You just have to sit down and write. And sometimes I could sit there for a half an hour, not accomplish anything. But so even if you start out like 5 minutes a day and it's still challenging, but that's just a nice support, and if you don't, like there's a writers group here in town that I went to a couple of years back, but I didn't connect. I didn't feel comfortable in the group. I didn't feel like it just wasn't a good fit for me. But this is an option. I could meet with somebody in Timbuktu, and the group that I did get involved with, I really quite enjoyed. And I never connected with anybody, got to know anybody, but the facilitator, he was just very good at, and it's different people each time. But the whole thing, like I said, is this, okay, there's the hour, turn my video off and just get to work and do whatever. And I was really productive in it. So I found it very helpful.
Yeah, that's a really good way to focus, actually. Yeah. I think one of the things I tell myself sometimes is just allow an hour a day. And I do this with a lot of things now. An hour a day for focused activity on a particular project, be it writing, working in the garden, whatever. But just really.
Yeah, but I find for myself, it could be like, oh, I'll work in the garden and then, or
I know.
writing. It's like, well, maybe I'll go work in the garden and then I'll come back to the writing.
Yeah.
Well, maybe I'll go walk the dogs and then I'll come back to the writing. Well,
I know.
Yeah. Mark Victor Hansen, who was one of the co-write authors of the Chicken Soup saga, belonged to one of his groups for a while, and his challenge was every day write 750 words. Even if you write Mickey Mouse ran up the clock, but to have your, in Microsoft Word, you get a word count, and just to aim for 750 words a day, and or 10 minutes a day. And they showed just some examples of how much had been accomplished by that routine of just knowing you're going to go to your particular place and you're going to do those 10 minutes, or you're going to do your 750 words. I have published...
That's this woman.
yeah, she's fabulous. Yes, I've done her work.
Yeah, I've worked through the Artist's Way too. It's really inspirational.
Yes, right. It's very I took that.
But I've been earning my living all of my life but writing, so I don't have a problem with creative writing at all. But let me say that my work blurbles out. It just does. It's like all the poems that came out of here, most of them were just written, sit down and write the poem. And I've done very little editing. Well, I did more editing on the next publication than I did on the first one, for sure. But I've been blessed with this. I'm a wordsmith. And I love writing.
I wanted to share some of the things that I've done in marketing my books. I've written 2 books using the self-publishing. When I was in Toronto and writing, I was a freelance writer for publications. I freelance a lot of nutritional stuff to magazines like Chatelaine, different food books. And then I was a writer for 10 years with the Globe and Mail and the Toronto Sun doing food and nutrition related. But with the poetry, what really got me into the habit of having something written each week was that belonging to an open mic group. And every week, the facilitator expected you to have something new. It's like, don't come up in here with your old poems, write something new. And so it was a challenge because I know, these other people would be there. And I started first just printing out and making those dual tang folders with poems. And so then it got to be a folder that was poems about love, a folder that was poems about heartbreak. And to the point that I had a book, the first book was From Pillows to Pillows, and it had 6 emotions. First, it was anger, because my initial injury, I had anger over losing my ability to work, having to move from Toronto because I couldn't take the cold, anger about a lot of things, social justice. And then the next was a lot of poems that dealt with grief. And then heartache of love, heartache of different things. And then finally, the resurgence of faith, hope, and love. And I began to, from hearing me at sometimes open mic, people would invite me to something else. So I started making photocopies of these sections of poems. And so when I went to read, I would have the photocopies to sell. So they were kind of like, what do we call them, dispatches or editions or zines. It was before the idea of a zine, but as people within Quirky have explained to me what a zine is, it's stapled together and people could buy them in segments or sections. But then having a plan in mind, something that I learned through a group is identifying who is your audience. It's good initially before you write a book to ask who your audience is, but if you're writing it from something that's motivated within you, then who are the people that like stories about travel? What do they do? Do they belong to clubs? Is there opportunity to go to the club to speak? Because a lot of groups like to have speakers. So I found myself, I've sold of my first book over 100 copies, speaking at churches and having some copies made, because I thought, well, I published through Arthur House. That's what they specialize in, and their pricing compared with some of the others was pretty good, and they had a fairly good reputation of working with the authors, and so I think the first book did cost me about $1,200, but I made back that money because I found places that I could speak, and also people who like you. My high school has a reunion every 5 years, so I told the program person, I have a book. That group also had a table. If a church or somebody has a table where you can pay $25 or so to have a table, I found that churches, if you have I've shared my poetry at churches. If I've had a table at a church and I have my books, they buy all the books up. So looking for things where there are people that like the things that you do or like the topics that you're writing about. If you have an opportunity, now it's a little difficult because without events, there aren't all these opportunities where you can pay $25 to have a table. Some people are doing virtual things where when you attend a virtual event, the speakers will have a table and people can patronize their table through breaks that they have at the conference. Another thing is readers clubs, people who are book clubs. You can find through different places. You can find through Facebook. You can find through different searches what book clubs exist within your city. So there was a veterans women's group who was having a bus ride. The casinos pay people to bring people on a bus. And so I found out they did. I said, oh, you guys do fundraisers. So I went on their fundraiser. I read some poems on the book, so on the bus. And so some people ordered them. And then I said, I could do a fundraiser for you where you pre-order, because I thought this is great. I hate having to mail out books. A book club will pre-order books. And so you say you're going to come to their event and you will sign them. People will get a signed copy. So it eliminated the need to mail the books out to the people. They prepaid, and I made it so that the book was $15, that the club would make $4 from each book. And, if people like to, within whatever event they're having, have some entertainment, I would tell stories and do something from the book. And then there were other people who came to the club. There was one woman who had a daycare and she wanted to do a fundraiser. So all in all, I did about 5 different fundraisers, one for Agape, the Agape Senior Centers. It gave me a space, you can print at Office Depot and at Costco fairly inexpensively. You can make a tabletop display. What's the other place that there's another place that advertises on TV. They print business cards and different things. But
Office Depot?
Besides Office Depot, there is, I'll think of the name, I'll give you the name, but there's a place that you can print your business cards. They have a package. But Costco also has a printing department, but it's not that expensive to make a tabletop display. You can make something that's 16 by 19, make it easel top so it stands up on the tabletop. So it just began from going to people who like you or people who do things. If you support something, like supporting people who had their own fundraising and saying, here's a fundraiser, you don't have to buy any candy. If you hate doing things and the profit margin on candy is $5, then I'll make the profit margin on my book $5, because that person that's the head of the group, they're working to get that $5. They don't have. And so I found it was very good that I did more than 5 times had a fundraiser through an organization. And through book clubs, a book club at a church that I belong to in LA, and a book club that I never thought that people would see the book Heart Balm Just for You, particularly as a spiritual book. But one pastor bought the book. I had people buy the book for Advent because there were poems in the beginning of the book that talked about preparation, and part of Advent is, preparation. So that is what I now have invested in, having somebody create a list for me of human resources people. Because again, if what you write poems that a lot of my poems about are recovery from physical things, recovery from heartache. What do human resources people do? The human resources people, especially those with what they call employee assistance services, those people who've got family problems or those people who are depressed, they have money to buy things to lift people's mood. And so someone unexpected to me who had a copy of my book, she said, I carry your book in my briefcase. She's a consultant to business. And when somebody says that there's something that they can't do, I read them this poem, Step, Step, Step. And she said, they don't get it at first. And I said, but they relate the poem to the thing. So she has sold copies of my book to people because she's found it fits something. So it's, I think, thinking, what does your book fit? Like Neal's book and fitting holistic health. There are a lot of people who are practitioners of alternative health that really don't have a book, but a lot of practitioners then might buy 10. I've had some people buy 10 just to have them to give to their particular clients or their particular group of people. But taking advantage now, the pandemic really knocked the winds out of my sails for something that I had found to be profitable in taking part in local book fairs. In Los Angeles, there was a big local book fair. Atlanta, they had a thing for authors. My sister's in Atlanta, and she said, they're having this thing for authors, and if you send them a thing, they might include you. Well, not only did they include me, but by virtue of being there, the library for Georgia said, anybody who took part in this authors book fair, we have a short circuit course pathway for you to get your book included in the Georgia book library system. Now, I thought most of the times you perceive the process for getting things is going to be complicated. I spent, I don't know how much money, and I had my grandson that you've seen sometime pass behind here. We sent 182 letters to individual libraries, trying to get individual libraries to buy the book. I found out in one day at the Vancouver Public Library, there is a desk where you can go with a copy of your book. You can fill out a form to have your book included in the Vancouver Public Library system. They don't charge you anything. If you give them the book, then they will order more copies. So from myself, they do accept self-published, the self-publishing publishers as a publisher. Some things say, unless it was Random House, some of the other names, we don't take those books. But some self-published companies have a good reputation. So Arthur House was among the ones that they said, yes, we would buy a book from them. So I have sold some books through the library system. They also, this is a very important thing for people to know, the Vancouver Public Library now is promoting independent authors. So if you go in and you get your book listed with them, they also send you news about when you can, what they're doing. They are doing something to direct their readers to
that desk
independent authors.
That desk is now closed, and it's done online now. Mm-hmm. But the desk is closed.
Yeah, that was the last, 2 years ago when they had the big Canada Culture Days. A final thing that everybody here would be good to join is the BC Federation, BC Writers Federation. BC Writers Federation, for $15, they will put an ad for your book into a dispatch that they send out. They send out a roundup, and it goes to all of their members. It has a synopsis about the book. It has a synopsis about you, and it has a link directly to where you could buy it. So if your book is available on Amazon, or if your book is available from your publisher, they can have a link that will go right to the purchasing page for them. So I thought that was a very worthwhile investment. And there's something else. It's worth joining. Everyone who writes, it's worth joining the BC Federation. I think it's $45 for seniors, but they have workshops, they have meetups, they have opportunities to do readings. So I have found that a very beneficial, very worthwhile thing to do.
Yeah, I actually belong to the Royal City Literary Arts Society, and it's only $15 a year. And they do I've done some really good writing workshops through them as well, which I found really helpful. They also do reading evenings, poetry, short stories. So yeah, they're a good resource to anybody that lives in this area too.
And then two things I've just learned, Instagram and LinkedIn. Does everyone have a LinkedIn account?
Yeah, I don't use it that much anymore.
Okay, it's a very good thing to use because what LinkedIn does, it lets you upload samples of things. So I have they have a feature called Write an Article. And once I didn't know that it activated Write an Article, I put one of my poems in. And so it went into the Write an Article. So then people will comment. So now I have it in my marketing plan for I have a mentor that's told me I fail to do this consistently every day. There's a challenge for many things for every day for 30 days, whether you sing a song, write a poem, do a dance, do it every day for 30 days, post it to your Facebook, and also post it in LinkedIn as a story, a song, or whatever. And it attracts attention. It builds contacts for you because that's what everyone has to do is build contacts beyond the people that you know.
Yeah.
So I've been surprised by the comments that I've gotten from LinkedIn. I've got, so it's a very worthwhile, like you said, this is what the mentor is saying to me. After you get up, what do you do in the morning? Wash up, you brush your teeth, you eat, sit down, spend 1 minute, record something. Every day, record something, even if it's a sample poem, if it's a sample story, if it's an excerpt from what you do, because it moves this thing called algorithms. It attracts attention out into the universe. And you'll have people saying, yes, I like that. Or, it's one way without the budgets, because I've had the self-publishing company give me a $1,200 budget of what it would cost for them to send something to every radio station, or they guarantee I'll get 4 radio interviews. Well, as a radio person, I know being on the radio does not sell a book for you. So why would I pay somebody to get me on a radio interview?
Yeah.
But
another thing you can do, Charlotte, instead of Neall said, I think he spent $500 for somebody to build him a website. But for a couple of things that I'm organized with, I've built Facebook pages and it costs nothing. I've actually put up a Facebook page for my ESL teaching. And I put up a couple of videos on there and some ESL information, and it costs nothing, and it's not that hard.
no, I have a Facebook page, and I've got a page for my nutrition stuff and a page for the poetry, and it gets it gives you a lot of opportunities to promote what you're doing and to meet other people, even other writers. Okay, well, thank you so much for joining us today, and we will look forward to seeing you again next week. And ideas and things that you have for what we might do as we move from Juicy July into active August, you can send me or let me know. And Jessie is working with people also on helping you to be a co-facilitator. So if there's something that you want to facilitate a session on, we welcome you saying, hey, I want to do that. This is what I want to do. And you get help with setting it up to facilitate it.